You're watching Noir Street. I'm your host, Nero Wolfe. Every story hides a secret, and every shadow hides a clue. Tell us where in the world you're watching from. Subscribe, tap the like button, and join us as we drift into mystery. Chapter 1. Valentine's Knock. Valentine's Day is supposed to arrive with trumpets, satin ribbons, and people behaving as if the human race has just discovered affection. That year it came the way a pickpocket comes, quiet, neat, and already guilty. At 8:30 in the morning, I was in the front room of the brownstone on West 35th Street, doing what I do when Nero Wolfe is upstairs with his orchids, and I am downstairs with my conscience. I was balancing the mail on my fingers as if it were a tray of explosives. The mail is never just mail in that house. Half the envelopes are bills, which Wolfe considers a vulgar invention. The other half are invitations, which Wolfe considers a more vulgar invention, and the remainder are people asking him to fix what they have broken, which Wolfe considers the only tolerable commerce between strangers. I had just finished sorting when Fritz Brenner came in from the kitchen with a tray that was not to be trifled with. Wolfe's breakfast. Coffee that could have waked the dead if the dead still cared. Eggs prepared as if the fate of nations depended on them, and toast sliced with the gravity of a funeral director. Fritz set the tray down with his usual care and glanced at the front door, as if it were a weather report. "It is a day," he said, "for flowers." "It's a day for florists to buy a second car," I said. "If any flowers come here, they'll have to fight their way past Wolfe's orchids." Fritz's mouth twitched. In Fritz, that counts as laughter. "Those are not flowers," he informed me with serene insolence. "Those are orchids." Before I could make the customary remark about the difference between orchids and flowers being the difference between a duchess and a woman, the doorbell rang. It wasn't the timid peck of a messenger boy. It was a firm, confident press, like a man who had a job to do and intended to do it before the city's sentimentality could gum up the streets. I went to the hall, opened the door, and found a delivery man standing there, with a bouquet big enough to hide a small politician. Crimson roses. Dozens of them. Packed so lavishly that if a woman threw her arms around it, she might never get them back. The man was compact, with cheeks that had seen the winter, and he wore the resigned expression of someone who had spent the morning listening to other people say, "Oh, and how wonderful." And he didn't. He held the bouquet out. "For Miss Mira Hale's signature, please." "Mira Hale," I said. "That's a new one." He didn't care whether it was new or old. He cared about signatures and getting paid. I took the card from the bouquet first. The envelope was cream-colored, thick, and meant to convey seriousness. On the front, in a bold hand, it said, "Mira Hale." Inside, the message was plain, with no flourishes and no perfume. 6 words. Not a poem, not a declaration, not even a cautious compliment. "I should have told you first." That was all. No name. I looked at the delivery man. "Who sent it?" He shrugged with the weary tolerance of a man asked, "Who makes the moon shine?" "I got an order. Cash, no return name. You want it or not?" I was still holding the card. 6 words and no signature, and somehow it felt heavier than Wolfe's desk. "I want to see the receipt," I told him. He gave me a look, half suspicious, half bored, and pulled a duplicate slip from his pocket. I didn't snatch it. Archie Goodwin is not a snatcher by temperament, but I took it fast enough. The slip had a florist's heading, one I didn't recognize at a glance, and the customer line read, "Ah, that was it." One letter like a man who writes his identity in pencil and expects you to erase it. The address was not ours. It was a building on the east side. Nice neighborhood. Clean doorman. Probably a rent that would make Fritz sigh. The time of delivery was marked 8:20 a.m. Then the delivery man cleared his throat. Sign. I handed him my fountain pen. "Archie Goodwin," I wrote. And under it, because I'm occasionally careful, "Received." I returned the pen. He started to go, then paused. "The lady, she home? She might be," I said. "I wouldn't know." He gave me a last glance, the kind a man gives when he has delivered something he doesn't understand, and doesn't want to. Then he went down the steps and disappeared into Valentine's Day. I stood there with the roses and the card and the receipt, and for a moment I had an odd feeling that I was holding a confession, not the kind people make in police stations, with sweat and handkerchiefs and the word accident. The kind they make when they've been awake too many nights and the morning finally catches them. Then I remembered Nero Wolfe's rules. One of them, not written but carved into the woodwork, is that no flowers enter the house except orchids, and orchids enter only under Fritz's supervision. Another is that I do not carry mysteries upstairs before Wolfe has had his breakfast. So I did what any sensible assistant would do. I took the bouquet into the office and set it down near the window, where it looked like a bloody sunset trapped in a vase. Then I went to the kitchen, found Fritz, and asked him if a bouquet of roses could be safely isolated from Wolfe's sensibilities. Fritz's nostrils flared. "Roses," he said, as if I had announced I'd brought a goat into the pantry. "Not for Wolfe," I assured him. "For a client, possibly." "Then it is your problem," Fritz said, and carried the breakfast tray toward the elevator with a dignity that implied I should be grateful he hadn't called the police. At 9 on the dot, as always, Wolfe came down from the plant rooms. Nero Wolfe descending the stairs is not like a man coming to breakfast. It is like an emperor arriving to inspect a province. He was large, immaculate, and composed, with a face that suggested the world had disappointed him since the day he first learned it existed. He stopped at the office doorway. His eyes, which missed very little when he chose to look, fell at once on the roses. For a second his expression did not change. Then his upper lip moved, a tiny adjustment, barely visible, but in Wolfe it counts as a speech. "Mr. Goodwin," he said, "if you have become a florist, you must resign at once." "Happy Valentine's Day to you too," I said. They arrived at the door. "Not for you, for a woman named Mira Hale." He looked annoyed at being forced to process the existence of a woman before coffee. "Then why are they here?" "Because the card is interesting," I said, and handed it to him. Wolfe read it. His eyes stayed on the 6 words longer than they needed to. He read them as if they were a line of figures, and he suspected fraud. "I should have told you first," he repeated aloud, not because he liked the sound, but because he wanted the weight of it. He handed the card back. "Meaning?" "That's what I was hoping you'd tell me," I said. "The delivery slip has only an initial." Our Wolfe's gaze returned to the roses. "Apology," he pronounced, as if he had tasted it. "You're getting poetic. I am getting precise. Those words are not an endearment. They are an admission, and roses on this day." He waved one thick hand, as if brushing away a cloud of cheap perfume, "are a disguise." "A disguise for what?" "For urgency," Wolfe said. He turned away with the decision made and headed toward the dining room. "Bring the card, and remove that heap from my sight." It was not an order, it was a decree. I carried the roses back to the office window and stood them farther away, as if distance might make them behave. Then I followed Wolfe into the dining room and sat in my chair with the card and receipt in my pocket. Wolfe ate breakfast as if it were the only rational act left in New York. I watched him, which is usually my entertainment, until the day provides a better one. Fritz served in silence, except for a brief and terrifying discussion about coffee temperature. When Wolfe finished and lit a cigar, another imperial ritual, I waited until the smoke had settled into the room like a verdict. "Who is Mira Hale?" Wolfe asked, finally. "Beats me," I said. "But I can find out." No lecture about roses corrupting civilization. "Mr. Goodwin," Wolfe said, "my opinions on roses are irrelevant. A woman has received an apology, anonymous and urgent, on a day when apologies can be overlooked. The sender has taken pains to conceal identity, yet the message implies an intimacy of knowledge." "Or a guilty conscience," I said. "Which is an intimacy," Wolfe snapped. "Proceed." I went to the office and placed a call to information, then to a couple of newspapers I have on friendly terms, and then to Saul Panzer, because if Saul can't find a person in New York, the person is either dead or hiding in a chimney. While I waited, I examined the florist's heading on the receipt. Marrow and stem, floral design, address, a side street in Midtown. I knew the neighborhood, expensive rents, cheap souls. The receipt also had a number, and I dialed it. A woman answered, brisk and bright. The voice of someone trained to sound delighted even while counting your money. Marrow and stem. This is Archie Goodwin, I said. I have a question about an order placed this morning. I can't give information about customers. I don't blame you, I said, but I'm not asking for a customer. I'm asking if the person who placed the order was named Gavin Rook. There was a pause. I could hear the little click of her mind calculating risk. Is this about the roses? She asked. I let that hang for half a second. It's about the sender. Another pause. Longer, then carefully. Who are you again? Archie Goodwin, I repeated. Assistant to Nero Wolfe. If you ever want to see the effect of reputation without seeing it, say that name into a telephone. People react like you've placed a snake on their desk. The detective, she said. Armchair variety, I told her. He can't. She caught herself because she had nearly said he can't come here, which is a fact most of Manhattan learns eventually. What do you want? To know if Gavin Rook ordered the roses. Her voice dropped. Gavin Rook came in yesterday. He paid cash. He was upset. He didn't want his name on anything. Did he sign anything? He wrote an initial on the slip. Ah, that's what he wanted. Did he mention Mirror Hale? Yes, she said, and there was something like dread in it. He said the roses had to get there early. Before noon, he said. He said it mattered. Did he say why? But he asked if there was any way to send them without. She stopped again, then finished quietly, without anyone finding out. Did he leave with anything besides the bouquet? A copy of the receipt, that's all. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the roses as if they might answer questions on their own. By the time I had finished that call, Saul Panzer was on the line. Archie, Saul said. Mirror Hale is real. Mid-30s. Lives on East 73rd. Works for a charity outfit called Voss Foundation. Public face, but not the top. Voss Foundation, I said. That name rings a bell. It should. Randall Voss. Big money, bigger smile, gallus, speeches, awards, likes cameras. Any scandals? Nothing proven, Saul said. But money always has fingerprints. Anything on Gavin Rook? Saul exhaled. He's the one who's harder. Private security, occasionally freelance. Clean record, but he's been around. The kind of man who knows how to stand in a doorway and look like part of the furniture. So he sends apology roses to Mirror Hale and wants his name hidden. And then you call me, Saul said, which usually means somebody's about to stop breathing. I had just opened my mouth to tell Saul not to be melodramatic when the doorbell rang again. This time it was not a delivery man. It was Inspector Kramer. You could always tell when Inspector Kramer was coming up the steps because the brownstone seemed to brace itself. Kramer was built like a man who had fought his way through 20 years of human stupidity and had the scars to prove it, even if you couldn't see them. I opened the door. Morning, Inspector. You're early for a Valentine. Kramer's eyes slid past me into the office. They found the roses at once. Don't tell me Wolfe's turned romantic, he growled. I wouldn't dare, I said. What brings you? Bring you, he snapped. You think I came for a social call? There's a body behind a florist shop on 46th Street. The dead man's name is Gavin Rook. Saul's voice was still in my ear from the phone in the office. I had not hung it up properly, and the receiver lay on the desk. Saul probably listening and getting his own education. Kramer watched my face. You know that name, he said. I know it now, I said carefully. You said behind a florist shop? Yeah. Shuttered place. Alley out back. Somebody dumped him there like trash. Kramer's mouth tightened. No wallet, no money. But in his pocket, he reached inside his coat and produced a small torn slip. This. It was the other half of the receipt. The item line. The part I hadn't seen. Read, Bouquet, crimson roses. Under it, in smaller print, the delivery address, East 73rd Street, Mirror Hale. Kramer looked from the receipt to the roses to me. "Now tell me," he said, "why the hell a murdered man is sending flowers to some dame, and why the trail leads straight to this house like it had a street map." I shut the door behind him and took the receipt from his hand as if it might burn me. "Inspector," I said, "you know Wolfe. If a trail leads here, it's because the trail wants to be understood." Kramer snorted. "Or because you two have your noses in everybody's business. Where is he?" "Breakfast just finished," I said. Kramer followed me into the office, still glaring at the roses as if they were guilty too. I bent over the phone, picked it up, and spoke into it. "Saul," I said, "you still there?" A beat, then Saul's voice, dry. "I'm still alive, which is more than Gavin Rook can say." "Keep digging," I told him. Hard. I hung up and turned to Kramer. "You want Wolfe," I said. "He's in the dining room, but before you start throwing your weight around, you should know something." Kramer's eyebrows rose. "What?" I held up the card from the bouquet, the one with the 6 words. "This," I said, "is what Gavin Rook sent with those roses." Kramer read it, his lips moving around the sentence as if it were a foreign language, which for him it was. When he finished, his eyes narrowed. "I should have told you first." He looked up. "Told her what?" "That," I said, "is exactly the question Wolfe likes." From the dining room came the sound of a chair shifting. Wolfe, no doubt, having heard Kramer's voice even through the thickness of his own pride. A moment later, Wolfe appeared in the doorway, filling it like a barricade. He looked at Kramer, then at the receipt in my hand, then at the roses, and finally at the card. His expression didn't change much, but his eyes sharpened the way they do when a problem stops being theoretical. "Inspector," Wolfe said, as if Kramer were a necessary nuisance like weather, "it is regrettable that you have come." Kramer's mouth pulled back. "Save it, Wolfe. A man's dead, and your boy's holding the receipt, like it's a love letter." Wolfe's gaze fell on the torn paper. "It is not a love letter," he said at once. "It is an apology." Kramer stared. "You got that from 6 words. I got it from the manner of the words," Wolfe said, "and the roses chosen to conceal them. Mr. Goodwin, the name of the recipient." "Mirror Hale," I said. Wolfe nodded once. "Then she must come here." Wolfe's voice stayed calm, which is usually a sign he is about to become unbearable. "Inspector, you have a murder and an inadequate beginning. I have a beginning and the intention to make it adequate. The woman is the fulcrum." Kramer glowered. "And if she doesn't want to come?" Wolfe looked at him as if he had asked what would happen if gravity decided to take the day off. "Then, Inspector, you will bring her." Kramer's hands flexed, and for a second I thought he might try to grab Wolfe by the lapels, which would have been like trying to move a piano by scolding it. Then he remembered the last dozen times Wolfe had been right when Kramer had been loud. Kramer jerked his head at me. "Goodwin, you go get her." I started to protest out of habit, but Wolfe spoke first. "Indeed, Mr. Goodwin, go at once." I put on my hat and coat, because in that house when Wolfe says, "at once," you do it unless you want to spend the day being verbally skinned. I paused by the roses. For a crazy instant I imagined Mirror Hale opening her door that morning, seeing them, reading 6 words, and feeling whatever it is a person feels when the past knocks politely and holds out a bouquet. And then, before noon, the sender was a corpse in an alley. Valentine's Day, like I said, had come in quiet and sweet and already guilty. Now it had teeth. I opened the door, stepped out into New York's winter sunlight, and headed east to find a woman who had just received an apology from a dead man. An apology someone had killed to keep from being accepted, because if the roses weren't romantic, they were something worse. They were evidence. Chapter 2. Petals don't lie. If you ever want proof that New York can do tenderness without meaning it, take a taxi across town on Valentine's morning. You pass men carrying roses like shields, women carrying boxes like trophies, and delivery boys darting through traffic as if Cupid had a union contract. I gave my driver an address on East 73rd Street and spent the ride thinking about Gavin Rook, security man, anonymous flower buyer, and now a corpse with an inconvenient receipt. It wasn't a comforting line of thought, but comfort is a luxury in my business, and Wolfe's a man who doesn't approve of luxuries unless they can be eaten. Mira Hale lived in a building with a doorman who wore a uniform and the look of a man who had seen everything, disapproved of most of it, and was paid to forget it. I gave him my best smile, the one that suggests I belong wherever I happen to be. Morning, Archie Goodwin. I'm here to see Miss Hale. The doorman glanced at my face, my hat, my coat, running an inventory. She's in, he said cautiously. Then it's a good morning, I told him. Because if she wasn't, I'd have to climb the drainpipe and we'd both be annoyed. That got a reluctant twitch out of him. He buzzed me through. And I took the elevator up to a floor where the carpet looked like it had never been cursed at. Mira Hale opened her door on the second ring. She was about mid-30s, hair dark and tidy, face composed in the way that comes from practice. Public relations practice or survival practice, take your pick. She was dressed as if she had a schedule. People who have schedules don't like unexpected visitors. What is it? She asked. No name offered, no invitation. I'm Archie Goodwin, I said, assistant to Nero Wolfe. Her eyes changed, not widened, not narrowed, just altered focus, like a camera adjusting to a threat. Why are you here? Because of the roses, I said. A small pause. It was the sort of pause that tells you the person has been waiting for a particular knock and did not expect it to come from your knuckles. They're ridiculous, she said, and her tone was light, but her hand on the doorknob was not. It was white. Ridiculous doesn't usually require a detective, I told her. May I come in? She hesitated. Then she stepped back, and I walked into an apartment that smelled of money and restraint, clean lines, tasteful art. No clutter, the kind of place where no one ever admits they cry. She led me to a sitting area and stayed standing. Her eyes kept flicking to the hall as if she expected someone else to appear. You said Nero Wolfe, she said. What does he have to do with this? He's got a stubborn interest in anything that looks like a message, I said. And this one has turned into a death. It took a second for the words to land. When they did, the composure cracked at the edges. What? She said. Gavin Rook is dead, I told her. Found behind a florist shop this morning. She made a sound that wasn't a gasp, because she was too disciplined for theatrics. It was more like the air went out of her lungs and forgot to come back. No, she said. She swallowed. That's not possible. New York specializes in possible, I said. Do you know him? She turned her head sharply toward the window, as if her eyes needed somewhere harmless to land. I knew him, she said, years ago. How many years? 5, maybe more. She frowned, and for an instant her face looked younger. I don't keep track. You haven't spoken since. Her answer came fast. Number it was too fast. The way a practiced line is too fast. I've heard that speed in courthouses and confessionals. Then why did he send you roses with an apology? I asked. Her eyes snapped to mine. What apology? I took the card from my pocket and held it out. This one. She didn't reach for it right away. She stared at it like it was something that might bite. Then she took it, carefully. By the edges, when she read the 6 words, her fingers tightened so hard the card bent. I should have told you first, she murmured. You recognize the handwriting. She shook her head. Number, you recognize the sentiment. Her chin lifted. I don't know what you mean. I leaned back in my chair and let my voice go mild. Miss Hale, I'm not the police. I'm a man doing an errand for an employer who hates being wrong. If you'd like to keep your life from being invaded by Inspector Kramer and a squad of men who ask questions with their feet, you may want to talk to me now. She looked down at the card again. When she spoke, her voice was controlled, but the control had strain in it, like a wire pulled too tight. Gavin Rook had no reason to contact me, she said. If he did, it was a mistake. People don't buy premium roses to make mistakes, I said. They make mistakes with postcards. Her gaze flicked up. Premium, top shelf stems, the kind that cost enough to make a man think twice before dying. I watched her face. He paid cash, and he didn't want his name attached. The order was signed with an initial. I didn't say which initial yet. I wanted to see if her eyes would tell me before her mouth did. What initial? She asked. I said. That did it, not much. Just a tiny reaction, a stiffening of her shoulders, a blink that came a fraction too late, but it was something. She repeated, and the word came out flat. Does that mean anything to you? I asked. She opened her mouth, closed it, and then sat down very abruptly, as if her legs had decided not to be loyal. No, she said. And it was a lie. But it was a lie she believed she was entitled to. I let it go for the moment. Where were you this morning? I asked. Her head snapped up. Are you accusing me? I'm collecting the furniture before the police come in and start throwing it, I said. Where were you? At work, she said. At the Voss Foundation. Randall Voss, I said. She nodded, wary. Do you work directly with him? In communications, she said. Sometimes. There's a team. Anion see you receive the roses. Her mouth tightened. The doorman, a colleague. It was delivered here, not to the office. You had it delivered to your home, I said. I didn't order it, she snapped, then softened. I mean, I didn't ask for it. But it came here early, I said. Before noon mattered. She stared at the card again, as if the answer might be printed on the blank back. Her hands were shaking, not dramatically, just enough to show she was fighting it. She hid them by placing the card on the table and folding her fingers together. The shaking didn't stop. It just became private. I haven't spoken to him, she insisted, and it was almost pleading. Miss Hale, I said, people can go years without speaking and still have the same unfinished sentence between them. That hit her throat worked. What does Wolfe want? She asked. To see you, I said. Her eyes widened slightly. Me? Why? Because he thinks you're the fulcrum, I told her. And because a man is dead who wanted you to read that sentence. She stared at me for a long time. Then she said quietly, I can't go to your house. You can, I said. You may not want to, but you can. I have meetings, she said, and it sounded absurd even to her. Then you'll reschedule them, I said. Unless you prefer rescheduling your life after the police finish with it. She drew a breath and made a decision that looked like swallowing something sharp. All right, she said, but I'm not saying I know why he did it. You don't have to, I said. Wolfe likes puzzles. As she went to get her coat, I did what I always do when I'm in a room with too much polished wood and too few fingerprints. I looked around. The apartment had the usual signs of a professional woman. Books that had been opened, not just displayed, a laptop on a desk, a calendar pinned with neat handwriting. But there was one thing that didn't fit the neatness. A photograph on a side table, not framed fancy, just a plain frame in it. Mira stood beside a man. The man was older, broad, shouldered, and smiling as if he had learned to smile for cameras. Randall Voss in the flesh of paper, and beside them, half in the background, a third figure, only part of a face and a shoulder, caught in the edge of the shot. A man in a dark suit, eyes watchful, not smiling. Security, the kind of man who knows how to stand in a doorway and look like furniture. Gavin, I asked, pointing. She froze at the closet door with her coat half off the hanger. Her eyes went to the photo. For a second she looked like she might deny it. Then she exhaled. He was assigned to Voss's team for a time, she said, and that was not the same as I haven't spoken to him. When? I asked. 2 years ago, she said quietly, just for an event series. Did you speak then? I pressed. She stared at the coat in her hands as if it were a witness she wanted to silence. Not much. But enough, I said. She didn't answer. She put the coat on like armor. We went down together, the doorman watching with the mild curiosity of a man who will tell his wife later that something interesting happened on Valentine's Day. Outside, the street was bright, with hearts and roses and the great city's indifference. I hailed a taxi in the cab. Mira sat stiffly, hands in her lap. The silence between us was thick enough to slice. "You were surprised when I said the order was signed?" "Ah," I said. Her jaw tightened. "I was surprised," she said evenly, "because you keep talking as if the roses are a crime." "They're not," I said. "They're a motive, or a message, and Gavin Rook is dead before noon on a day when he wanted you to read 6 words before noon." She stared out the window. "You're making this worse." "I'm making it real," I said. When we reached the brownstone, I paid the driver and led her up the steps. As we entered, I could hear Wolfe's voice from the office, low, controlled, lightly slicing Kramer into manageable portions. I opened the office door and ushered her in. Inspector Kramer was there, planted in Wolfe's red leather chair, as if he owned it. Wolfe sat behind his desk, cigar in hand, face composed in that calm that makes men nervous. Wolfe's eyes went to Mira. He didn't stand. Wolfe does not stand unless he is forced by fire or manners, and he dislikes both. But his gaze took her in, from her careful coat to her careful expression to the careful fear she was trying to hide. "Miss Hale," he said. "I am Nero Wolfe." "I know," she said. And her voice was steady, but her hands were not. She kept them clasped. Kramer got up, scowling. "All right, lady," he said. "Let's get this straight. You knew Gavin Rook. He sent you flowers. Now he's dead. Start talking." Mira flinched, but only slightly. Her eyes went to Wolfe, not Kramer, instinct or intelligence. Wolfe ignored Kramer as if he were a loud clock. "Miss Hale," Wolfe said. "You received the roses and the card this morning." "Yes," she said. "You did not order them." "Number, you have not spoken to Mr. Rook in years," Wolfe said. Her lips parted, and for an instant I saw the truth try to escape. Then she said, "Yes." Wolfe's eyes stayed on her face. "That is false." Kramer barked. "Ha!" Like he'd been waiting all morning for Wolfe to say it. Mira's chin lifted. "How dare you?" Wolfe raised one hand, palm outward, not a gesture of apology but of dismissal. "The card," he said. "Mr. Goodwin, bring it." I handed it to him. Wolfe held it between his thick fingers and examined it as if it were a rare insect pinned to paper. "Observe," he said. And he did not mean me. He meant the world. "The ink is smudged here, at the lower left edge." Kramer leaned in reluctantly. I leaned in because leaning is part of my job. Wolfe tapped the spot with a blunt finger. A left thumb would do that. Mr. Rook was right-handed, as Inspector Kramer has confirmed from the manner in which he carried his weapon and signed prior documents. Kramer grunted. So, Wolfe said. "Someone handled this card after Mr. Rook wrote it. Someone left-handed, or someone using the left thumb deliberately. The smudge is fresh enough to show the ink had not fully dried when touched." Mira's face had gone pale. Wolfe continued, his voice steady and mildly annoyed, as if he were explaining arithmetic to a child. "The ribbon on the bouquet," he nodded toward the roses by the window, "is tied like a parcel, not like a romantic offering. A florist ties love with looseness, with flourish. This is tight, utilitarian. It is secured to withstand transport without shifting. It was meant to arrive intact, not charming." I had to hand it to him. Wolfe could make a bow into an indictment. "And the florist log," Wolfe said, turning to Kramer, "shows no purchase under the name Gavin Rook, only a cash order signed." Kramer's scowl deepened. "We know that. Means he didn't want his name on it." "Or," Wolfe said, "it means he did not place the final order at all." The room went quiet in the special way it does, when Wolfe drops a thought that lands like a safe. Mira's fingers clenched tighter. Wolfe watched her hands for a moment, and then his gaze lifted to her face, and his voice softened, not with kindness, but with precision aimed carefully. "Miss Hale," he said, "you are afraid. Not merely of the police, not merely of scandal. You are afraid of what Mr. Rook intended to tell you." The roses were not romantic. They were urgent. Someone ensured they were delivered on time. Someone ensured Mr. Rook did not live to explain them. Kramer slammed a palm on the desk. "Lady, if you're holding back." Wolfe cut him off with 2 words, cold as February. "Be silent." Kramer flushed. I almost smiled. Wolfe had a gift for making large men feel small without lifting a finger. Wolfe turned back to Mira. "Tell me," he said, "who needed that bouquet delivered before noon?" Mira's eyes flicked to me, then to Kramer, then back to Wolfe. Her lips parted. And then, from the hall, Fritz's voice floated in, calm, polite, and perfectly timed to ruin an emotional moment. "Mr. Wolfe," Fritz called. "It is time for lunch." Wolfe didn't move. His eyes stayed on Mira Hale, and he spoke as if Fritz had not existed. "Answer me," Wolfe said. Mira swallowed. Her hands were still shaking, like they never stopped. She began, and at that exact moment the doorbell rang again. On Valentine's Day, the city kept sending knocks, and every knock, in our line of work, is either a visitor or a warning. Chapter 3. A debt with thorns. The doorbell, arriving on cue, as if Fritz had scheduled it with lunch, turned out to be one of Inspector Kramer's men with a message that had all the charm of a summons. The medical examiner had finished with Gavin Rook and would be happy to answer questions, provided they were asked by people who wore badges. Kramer pocketed the message and turned back to Mira Hale like a bulldog returning to a bone. "You were about to say something," he growled. Mira's eyes went past him to Wolfe, and if she had been hoping for mercy, she had picked the wrong house. Nero Wolfe is not merciful. He is accurate. "I can't," she said, low. "Not here." Wolfe's eyebrows lifted a fraction. "Nonsense." "I mean," her hands unclasped and reclasped, the tremor still there, making a private mockery of her poise. "I mean not with him." She nodded toward Kramer, as if he were furniture that had been placed too close. Kramer's face reddened. "Lady, I'm the one." "You are the one," Wolfe said curtly, "who will now depart." He turned his head slightly. "Inspector, you have a murder attended. Mr. Goodwin and I will attend this." Kramer stared at him, jaw working. "Like hell you will. You're not running my case." Wolfe's voice stayed even. "I am not running it. I am clarifying it. You are welcome to benefit." Kramer glared at me, then at Mira, then at Wolfe, as if assessing the odds of strangling all 3 of us with his tie. Finally, he made a sound of disgust and reached for his hat. "All right," he said, "but if you 2 ham it up and I find out you kept a witness from me—" "You will stamp your feet," Wolfe said. "Good day, Inspector." Kramer left with the air of a man who intended to arrest the entire building on general principles. When the door closed, the room's temperature rose about 10 degrees. Mira exhaled shakily. "Thank you," she said to Wolfe. Wolfe looked mildly affronted. "Gratitude is unnecessary. Speak." She stared at the roses by the window as if their red heads had mouths. "I didn't know Gavin was dead," she said. "I swear it." "That," Wolfe said, "is irrelevant." Her eyes narrowed. "How can that be irrelevant?" "Because your ignorance did not kill him." Wolfe's tone suggested this was obvious. "Tell me what you know." Mira hesitated, then reached into her handbag and produced a small slip of paper, creased, folded, unfolded, and folded again. The kind of paper people carry when they don't trust their own courage. "He called me," she said, and the admission seemed to scrape her throat. "Last night." I felt my eyebrows go up. Wolfe's didn't, because Wolfe doesn't waste expression on confirmations of what he already deduced. "He left a message?" Wolfe asked. "Number he spoke," he said. Her voice faltered. "He said he needed to see me this morning. Early before noon. He said it was important." "And you refused?" Wolfe said. She flinched. "I said I couldn't. I had work." I said, I didn't want to drag up old things. Wolfe leaned back in his chair, cigar between his fingers, and looked at her the way he looks at a flawed argument. So, he sent roses. Yes, she whispered. He said he would send something. He said it would make me listen. I said, did he tell you where to meet? Her eyes shifted to me, then down. He said the Velvet Step. I blinked. The Velvet Step was a private club that specialized in dim lighting and expensive discretion. It was the sort of place where secrets sat at tables and ordered scotch. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. A club, he murmured, as if tasting an unpleasant vegetable. At what hour? 10, Mira said. He said 10. It is now. I checked my watch. 11:40. Mira's face tightened. I didn't go. No, Wolfe said. You came here. She nodded miserably. Wolfe made a decision. It showed in the angle of his head and the sudden stillness of his hands. Mr. Goodwin, he said, you will take Miss Hale to this club at once. I stared. Me, yes. And you? I will remain here, Wolfe said, as if my question had been decorative. Mira looked startled. You're not coming? Wolfe's eyes slid to her. Madam, I do not tail persons through the streets. I do not endure crowded rooms. I do not permit my digestion to be insulted by club air. Mr. Goodwin will go. He is agile. I'm touched, I said. Wolfe ignored me. Mr. Goodwin, observe. Listen. And if you meet resistance, invoke my name. It worked on the florist, I said. It should, Wolfe replied. Work on anyone with a brain. 20 minutes later, I was in a taxi with Mira Hale, headed downtown through sunlight that looked like it had been cracked and repaired with glue. New York in February has a way of making everything seem brittle: traffic, tempers, and promises. Mira sat beside me, rigid, clutching her handbag. What will we do there? She asked. Ask questions, I said. Try not to get thrown out. If we do, we'll do it with dignity. She didn't smile. The Velvet Step was tucked into a side street like a vice behind a curtain. There was no big sign, no cheerful heart in the window, just a door with a peephole and a man built like an oath. I gave my name. I gave Wolfe's. The door opened faster on Wolfe's than on mine, which is as it should be. Inside, the air was warm and scented with money. The lighting was low enough to forgive faces, and the furniture looked like it had been imported from a place where people don't pay taxes. A man came forward, slim, polished, and wearing a suit that fit him like a second opinion. His hair was perfect in the way only vanity can accomplish. Miss Hale, he said, with the practiced gladness of a man who recognizes a membership card. Then his gaze shifted to me. And you are Archie Goodwin, I said. Here on business. Where's Dean Mercer? His smile didn't falter, but it cooled. Dean is our manager. I prefer Dean, I said. This concerns Gavin Rook. That name did something in the room. Not loudly, just a slight tightening, like a string pulled. The polished man nodded once. This way. We were led past the bar, long, glossy, and stocked like a pharmacy for the wealthy. To an office door, the polished man knocked and went in without waiting, which told me Dean Mercer was used to people entering. Dean Mercer was behind a desk, looking up with impatience that softened into calculation when he saw Mira. He was in his 40s, with a face that suggested he had once been handsome and had since used it as currency. His eyes were sharp, his mouth careful. Miss Hale, he said, this is unexpected. Not as unexpected as murder, I told him. His gaze snapped to me. Pardon. Gavin Rook is dead, I said. Found at 11:15 this morning, behind a florist shop. We're here because he asked to meet Miss Hale at 10. Dean Mercer leaned back slowly, as if distance might protect him from the news. Dead, he repeated. Then he exhaled. So he didn't. He stopped. Didn't what? I asked. Dean's eyes went to Mira, then away, and his voice dropped. He was trying to clean an old stain. Mira's fingers tightened on her handbag strap. Dean, she said, and there was warning in her tone. Dean held up one hand. I'm not naming names, he said. But Gavin, he came here last night after closing. He wasn't drunk. He wasn't angry. He was— Dean searched for the word and found a grim one. Determined. Determined to confess, I said. Dean's mouth twitched. That's a bold word. It's the right one, I said. He sent roses with an apology. He wanted to see her before noon, and now he's dead. Dean looked past me, toward the bar area. His eyes narrowed slightly. Who else knew about this meeting? I asked. Only me, Dean said quickly. Too quickly again. And whoever he told— Did he tell you why? Mira asked, her voice tight. Dean hesitated, then spoke with reluctant honesty. He said if he did it right, it would unmake reputations and rearrange graves. Mira went pale. Mira went pale. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Rearrange graves, I echoed. Dean nodded once, his face tight, his words. I said, did anyone follow him out last night? Dean's eyes flicked to the corner of the office ceiling, barely a glance. But I saw it. There was a small security camera there, and it wasn't aimed where it ought to have been. It pointed a few degrees off, enough to miss the bar's main stretch, enough to create a convenient blind spot for anyone who knew where to stand with their whiskey. I looked at Dean. That camera, I said. Why is it turned? Dean's face didn't change much, but his eyes did. It's old, he said. It shifts. Convenient, I said. Mira's voice came out like a whisper. Dean, who did Gavin think he was exposing? Dean swallowed. He didn't say. He only said. He stopped, then forced it out. He said the truth had been earning interest for years, older than love and sharper than hate. I stood up, because I suddenly wanted to be standing when the next shoe dropped. Dean, I said, you're going to give me the club's log, and you're going to tell me who was here last night, and you're going to do it now. Dean Mercer looked at me for a long second, then glanced toward the door, as if measuring how quickly help could arrive. And I realized something else. In a place like this, help doesn't arrive by accident. It arrives because someone asked it to. Chapter 4. The receipt that vanished when I left the velvet step with Mira Hale. I had 3 things in my pocket, and 1 thing in my head. The 3 things were Dean Mercer's reluctant promise to cooperate, a matchbook from the club that I hadn't asked for but had taken anyway, and the strong suspicion that a security camera doesn't shift unless somebody with a steady hand shifts it. The thing in my head was Wolfe's voice, the one he uses when he has already constructed a bridge and is now waiting for the rest of us to bring the planks. We got back to the brownstone a little after 2. Mira looked as if she had aged a year during the cab ride. She wasn't sobbing or collapsing. She was simply holding herself together with the sort of effort that makes you wonder what would happen if she ever let go. In the office, Wolfe sat behind his desk with a fresh cigar and the air of a man who had been bored, only until the world remembered to be interesting. Fritz had arranged Wolfe's lunch schedule around the inconvenience of murder, and you could tell Wolfe appreciated the consideration without approving the cause. Inspector Kramer was not present. That alone told me Wolfe had bought himself a brief window of peace, which, in our business, is as valuable as a clean alibi, reported. I gave him Dean Mercer's phrases: old stain, unmake reputations, rearrange graves, and I mentioned the camera, turned a few degrees off its proper line like a polite lie. Wolfe listened without interruption, his eyes half-lidded. When I finished, he said only, that whom meant he had placed each fact into a mental drawer and was now evaluating which drawer held the knife. Mira stood near the office chair, not sitting, as if sitting would be a confession. Wolfe looked at her briefly. Miss Hale, he said, you will remain available. Her mouth tightened. I have work. You have a murder, Wolfe corrected, and you are involved. Her eyes flashed, and for a second I thought she might bolt. Instead she sat down stiffly, hands clasped so hard her knuckles blanched. Wolfe turned to me. The receipt. I reached into my pocket and produced Kramer's torn half, the portion that had been in Gavin Rook's pocket. I laid it on Wolfe's desk. Next to it I placed the duplicate slip I had gotten from the delivery man, a half intact except for the missing item line. Wolfe looked at the 2 pieces with the attention some men give to stock quotes. He aligned them, studied the tier, the fiber, the printed type. "This is not a retail florist receipt," he said. "No," I agreed. "The heading says marrow and stem, but the paper stock is heavier and the printing is industrial." Wolfe nodded. "Wholesale." He lifted the torn piece and sniffed it. Wolfe will sniff anything. He claims it is scientific. I claim it is a habit. "Cardboard dust," he murmured. "Shipping, Mr. Goodwin. Find the supplier listed in the small print." I squinted at the bottom edge. A faint line of text, half lost in the tier. Kestrel Floral Supply, and an address in Long Island City. "So our dead man's roses came through Kestrel," I said. "Or," Wolfe corrected, "the roses that were delivered came through Kestrel. The distinction is important." I frowned. "You still think Gavin didn't place the final order?" "I think," Wolfe said, "that Mr. Rook wished to conceal his identity. He did not wish to conceal his apology. Yet the apology was handled by another person before delivery. Therefore, the bouquet was under someone else's control at some point between composition and arrival." Mira's hands tightened. "You're saying someone intercepted it?" Wolfe's eyes moved to her. "I am saying someone arranged it. Mr. Goodwin, there is missing paper." "You mean the ripped item line," I said. "Yes," Wolfe replied. "It was removed deliberately, not torn accidentally. Inspector Kramer's half begins below the heading. Yours begins above the item listing. The item listing is absent from both. That requires intention." I stared at the receipt halves again. He was right. The tier wasn't one straight rip. It was two separate tiers. One to remove the item line cleanly, another to split the remainder. Somebody had wanted Gavin's pocket to contain proof of purchase, but not proof of what else he bought. Wolfe's gaze sharpened. "Mr. Goodwin, we will go." I blinked. "We? Yes," Wolfe said. "This is not a tale. It is a short expedition. Bring your coat." Mira stood up. "Where?" Wolfe ignored her and spoke to me. "To the place where the roses were delivered, East 73rd Street." I stared at him. Wolfe leaving the house between 1 and 4 is a phenomenon that makes meteorologists nervous. "You're coming out," I said, unable to keep the surprise out of my voice. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Goodwin, do not be foolish. The situation demands it. I will not permit you to blunder without supervision." That was as close to affection as Wolfe gets. 10 minutes later, we were in a cab. Wolfe taking up more than his share of seat and dignity. He stared out the window as if the city were a personal insult. When we reached Mira's building, the doorman's eyes widened, as if an elephant had asked for directions. He started to rise from his chair, then thought better of it and rose anyway. "Mr. Wolfe," I said, because I had to watch the doorman's face when I said it. The man swallowed. "Yes, sir, of course, sir." Wolfe gave him a glance that could have chilled a furnace. "This morning," Wolfe said, "a bouquet was delivered to Miss Hale. Where did the delivery man stand?" The doorman blinked. "At the door, sir." "Where did he place his feet?" The doorman looked at me as if to ask whether this was a joke. I gave him my innocent face. He pointed. Wolfe nodded. "And after the delivery, where did the delivery man go?" "Back down the steps," the doorman said. "To the sidewalk." "Did he pause?" The doorman hesitated. He did look at the street, sir, like he was checking traffic." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "The wind," Wolfe said, more to himself than to anyone. "Paper travels." He moved toward the entrance with unexpected speed for a man his size. I followed, and so did Mira, because she had no other choice and knew it. Outside, Wolfe stood on the steps and looked down at the sidewalk and curbed with the intent focus of a man examining a crime scene without admitting he was doing so. "Mr. Goodwin," he said. "The gutter." I blinked at him. "You think the missing piece?" "Yes," Wolfe said. "If a person wished to conceal an item listing, he might tear it away and discard it quickly. If he discarded it near the delivery point, the wind might catch it. It would travel to the nearest trap, water and grime." So there I was, in broad daylight, kneeling at a curb on East 73rd Street, while Valentine's Day couples stepped around me as if I were part of the scenery. Nero Wolfe stood behind me like a displeased monument. I used my handkerchief, because I have standards, and poked at the gutter debris, paper cups, cigarette ends, a crushed heart, shaped candy box, New York's romance thrown out with its garbage. Then I saw it, a damp folded corner of heavy paper wedged against the curb like it was hiding. I fished it out carefully. It was grimy and wet, but the print was intact. I unfolded it on the handkerchief, and my stomach tightened. It was the missing item line from the receipt. Only it wasn't one item line. It was two. Order 1, crimson roses. Bouquet, delivery, East 73rd St. Order. 2, black dahlias arrangement, pickup, 12:30 p.m. Hold for Archie timestamp. Same cash notation. Same initial, R. I stared at the words as if they were a slap. Mira leaned closer. What is that? Wolfe's eyes narrowed as he read. His face did not change, but I could see the calculation in the slight tightening around his mouth. Black dahlias, he said, and the word sounded like a verdict. Mira frowned. What are black dahlias? Not romance, I said quietly. They're endings. Mira's face drained. Why would Gavin order? He didn't, Wolfe said sharply. She looked at him. You're sure? Wolfe held out his hand. I gave him the damp slip. He examined it, then nodded once. The person who tore this away wished to conceal the second order, Wolfe said. That indicates it was significant. It was either incriminating or informative. Incriminating to who? I asked. Wolfe's gaze went from the slip to Mira's building to the street beyond, where cars passed like indifferent thoughts. To the person whose initial is R, Wolfe said. Mira's voice trembled despite her control. R could be Rook. It could, I said. Except Gavin's last name was Rook, not his first, and he asked the florist not to use his name, initialing R is lazy concealment. It's a flourish meant to be noticed. Wolfe nodded. Precisely. I looked at the slip again. Black dahlias. Pick up at 12:30. Hold for R. Gavin was dead before noon, I said. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. Yes, therefore he could not collect the black dahlias, Mira whispered. Then someone else was meant to. Wolfe's voice was calm, and that calm was dangerous. Or someone else did. The city around us continued its Valentine's errands. Flowers, chocolates, kisses. While we stood on a sidewalk holding a wet scrap of paper that smelled like gutter water and murder. A bouquet of crimson roses had said, "Forgive me." A second bouquet, black dahlias, said something else entirely. If one bouquet was an apology, the other was a warning, or a memorial, or a message meant for someone who knew exactly what endings look like. Wolfe folded the slip carefully, as if it were a fragile clue rather than a filthy scrap, and placed it in his pocket. "Mr. Goodwin," he said, "we will go to Kestrel Floral Supply." Wolfe looked at Mira Hale, and for the first time his voice held something like stern pity. "After that," he said, "we will learn what the other bouquet was intended to say. Because on our block, riddles don't stay riddles, they turn into answers. And answers, in my line of work, are usually paid for in blood." Chapter 5. The woman with the locked smile. Kestrel Floral Supply had the charm of a warehouse and the manners of a loading dock. It sat in Long Island City among stacks of cardboard, metal roll-up doors, and men who moved crates as if feelings were a contagious disease. Wolfe endured it with the stoicism of a martyr and the expression of a man cheated out of his afternoon beer. Inside, the air smelled of wet stems and refrigeration. A clerk with a clipboard and suspicious eyes told us, after Wolfe spoke his name with deliberate weight, that the near black dahlias died so dark they read as black order had not been picked up at 12:30 still on hold, the clerk said. "For our cash order." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Then you will show me the hold." The clerk did, not because he wanted to, but because Wolfe made resistance feel like stupidity. The arrangement was in a cooler, dark blossoms, theatrical and wrong, set in a low black box. It looked like a funeral had dressed for a gala. Wolfe inspected it without touching. He does not touch, unless compelled. Then he leaned slightly, and his nostrils flared. Ribbon, he murmured. It was the same utilitarian knot as the roses. Package, not love. Wolfe turned to the clerk. Who took the order? The clerk consulted his clipboard. Janice, she's on break. Summon her, Wolfe said. Janice arrived, chewing gum and wearing the defensive posture of a woman who spends her days telling men they cannot return flowers. When she saw Wolfe, she froze, the gum suddenly too busy for her mouth. Wolfe questioned her in his flat, economical way. Yes, a man had ordered 2 arrangements yesterday. No, he hadn't used the name Gavin Rook. Yes, he paid cash. Yes, he signed only... No. She couldn't swear whether he was right, handed or left. She didn't watch his hands. She watched his money. What did he look like? I asked. Janice shrugged. Tall coat, hat, like a lot of men. Did he come alone? Wolfe asked. Janice hesitated. There was a woman with him. Mira, who had been silent and pale beside me, stiffened. What woman? Janice shook her head. Not you, blonde. Nice coat, didn't talk much. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. Age. 30s. Maybe. Janice frowned, digging into memory. She smiled a lot, but it didn't reach her eyes. Wolfe's cigar was unlit. He had refused to smoke in the warehouse, claiming it would contaminate his palate, which was his way of saying the air offended him. Now, back in the cab, headed to Manhattan, he sat with his hands folded and his mind moving. A woman with a locked smile, he said. You're writing poetry now, I asked. I am describing a tool, Wolfe said. A tool used by a man who wished to conceal a second bouquet, Mr. Goodwin. What is your knowledge of the Voss Foundation's civic connections? Plenty of civic, I said. Gala money, council dinners, charity smiles. Wolfe nodded. Then we will see the city council. I stared at him. Wolfe, you're on a roll. Next, you'll be riding the subway. He gave me a look that suggested he would rather be murdered again himself. Do not be flippant. We returned Mira Hale to the brownstone. Wolfe insisted she remain available, which is Wolfe's word for under supervision. Then he sent me with a message to Inspector Kramer, more a courtesy than a concession, and settled himself at his desk with his telephone. Within the hour, we had an appointment at City Hall with a councilman's aide named Lila Crow. City Hall on Valentine's Day was a peculiar sight. Bouquets carried past portraits of dead mayors, chocolates smuggled into committee rooms, and clerks who looked as if they'd rather be anywhere else. The building has always felt to me like a place where idealism comes to be processed into paperwork. Lila Crow met us in a side office that smelled of coffee and political exhaustion. She stood when we entered, not because she respected Wolfe, but because she had been trained to stand for anything that might matter. She was in her early 30s, blonde, well put together, and wearing a smile that was careful, pleasant enough to be professional, tight enough to be safe. Her eyes were calm, too calm for a day when a man had died in an alley. Mr. Wolfe, she said, I'm surprised you came yourself. I am often surprising, Wolfe replied. Sit, Miss Crow. She sat. I sat too, because if you stand in City Hall, you're either testifying or waiting to be arrested. Wolfe began without preliminaries. Do you know a man named Gavin Rook? Who is he? Dead, I supplied. Her eyes flickered, just once, and then the calm returned. That's unfortunate. Wolfe watched her, as if she were a document he suspected of forgery. You work for Councilman Bristow, he said. Yes, and Councilman Bristow has ties to the Voss Foundation, Wolfe said. We accept donations from many philanthropists, she replied, publicly disclosed. Wolfe nodded as if this were dull. Mr. Rook works security for the Voss Foundation at events. Did you attend such events? Occasionally, she said. And you have therefore seen him, Wolfe said. I've seen many security people, she replied. None of them made an impression. Wolfe's eyes dropped, briefly, to her hands resting on the desk. Your wrist? Wolfe said. Lila blinked. My wrist? Your right wrist, Wolfe specified. She glanced down, and her smile tightened a fraction. There it was, a thin red scratch, fresh, angled like the signature of a thorn. Not a paper cut, not a cat, a thorn, florist. Clothes, Lila covered it with her other hand as if it had suddenly become indecent. It's nothing. Roses, Wolfe said flatly. Her eyes snapped up. Excuse me. A rose thorn does that, Wolfe said. Or a similar stem. You have been close to flowers in the last day. Lila's smile held, but the warmth drained out of it. It's Valentine's Day, she said. Everyone is close to flowers. Wolfe did not blink. Not everyone has a scratch on the inside of the wrist. That is the mark of someone who handled a bouquet held close, pressed in against the body. Delivery men carry with the forearms. Florists with gloves, a woman. Wolfe's eyes remained steady on hers. Carries it as one carries a secret. For a second her calm faltered. It was subtle, the way a well-made lock still clicks when you test it. Then her smile returned, exactly as before, locked in place. You're very observant, she said. I am paid for it, Wolfe replied. Now, Miss Crow, you will tell me why you have lied. Lila's eyes were too calm again. I haven't lied. Wolfe's voice sharpened. Do not insult me. That got her attention. People can tolerate accusation. They hate being told they're insulting. She drew a breath. I don't know Gavin Rook, she repeated, slower this time, as if changing speed might change truth. If he worked events, fine, that's not knowing. And yet, Wolfe said, you react to his name, not with grief, not with surprise, with caution. Lila's smile held. You interpret too much. Wolfe leaned back a fraction, as if he had decided to use a different tool. Very well then, tell me about the old case. Her eyes changed, not widened, just sharpened at the edges. The way eyes do when a word opens a door in the mind that the person hoped was bricked shut. I don't know what you mean, she said. You do, Wolfe replied. Lila's fingers pressed lightly against her wrist, over the scratch, as if to remind herself she was still intact. Then she said, he wouldn't stop digging. Wolfe's eyebrows rose. So you have heard of him? Lila's smile did not change, but the line of her jaw hardened. Somebody told me about him, she said carefully. After today. After his death, I said. She ignored me. Her eyes stayed on Wolfe, because she knew who mattered. Wolfe's voice was quiet. 15 years, he said. Lila's throat moved. An old case, she admitted. Something from 15 years back. Gavin, he kept asking questions, not officially, quietly, like he wanted someone to notice. And someone did, Wolfe said. Lila's smile tightened until it was almost painful. Some doors don't open, she said. Wolfe waited. Lila's voice hardened. They break. The words sat in the room like a threat left on a desk. Wolfe regarded her for a long moment, then spoke with mild contempt. That is melodrama. You are not a tragic heroine, Miss Crow. You are an employee. Her eyes flashed, but the calm remained. You don't understand how things work here. Oh, I understand, Wolfe said. I understand that you benefit from silence and that you fear forgiveness more than punishment. Lila's locked smile did not budge. But I saw something in her eyes then, something like relief that he had said it plainly, because, when a person benefits from silence, the greatest danger is not exposure. It is reconciliation. Forgiveness is the one thing that makes people talk. Wolfe stood. When Wolfe stands in a room, it means the interview is over, or the room is on fire. He did not offer his hand. You will be contacted again, he told her. Lila rose too, the smile still fixed. By whom? She asked. By the truth, Wolfe said, and turned away. In the corridor outside, I exhaled. Well, I said, she's a cheerful little number. Wolfe's eyes were cold. She is afraid, he said, and she is useful. Useful how? Wolfe glanced back toward the office door we had left. She spoke of 15 years, he said. Of an old case of doors that break, Mr. Goodwin. His voice turned crisp. Find that case. And if I can't, then you will try again, Wolfe said. We walked out into the February light. City Hall behind us like a stone mouth. The street was still selling romance, still tying ribbons, still pretending that hearts were simple. But the sidewalk riddle had sharpened. Who fears forgiveness more than punishment? The one who benefits from silence. And somewhere between a bouquet of roses and a bouquet of black dahlias, someone had decided silence was worth killing for. Chapter 6. 15 years. One fire back at the brownstone. The house had resumed its natural state, Fritz moving with quiet competence, Wolfe occupying his chair like an immovable opinion, and me doing the running that keeps Wolfe from having to encounter the world more than strictly necessary. The phrase 15 years kept tapping at my skull, the way a loose shutter taps a window at night. Lila Crow hadn't offered much, but she hadn't needed to. Wolfe had heard the one thing he wanted. Time in a Wolfe case isn't background. It's motive aging in the barrel. Wolfe sent Mira Hale to the front room with a book and the instruction to remain available, which she obeyed with the tight patience of a woman trapped in polite captivity. He then dismissed me to find the old case, which is his way of saying, go where I don't want to go and bring back something I can think about. I started with the obvious Inspector Kramer, because nothing greases old records like a policeman who owes you an explanation. Kramer answered on the third ring, sounding as if he had just finished yelling at someone and was hunting for a new target. What? Happy Valentine's Day? I said. We need a file from 15 years ago, warehouse fire, Jonah Pike. There was a brief silence, the kind that suggests a memory being dragged out by the collar. Where'd you get that name? Kramer demanded. From a woman with a locked smile and a thorn scratch, I said. Don't make me describe it. Can you pull the file? Kramer swore, then swore again, as if swearing were his way of thinking. That's old, he growled. Closed accident. Everything's an accident when the right people sign it, I said. We need it. Wolfe need it, Kramer corrected bitterly. You two always need something. Fine, come down. Wolfe doesn't come down, I reminded him. I know he doesn't, Kramer barked. You come down, and bring that dame if she's part of it. I'll bring paper, I said. Don't strain yourself. An hour later, after a subway ride, Wolfe would rather be fed to his orchids than endure. I was in a police building where the air smelled of ink, stale coffee, and men who have seen too much human nature to ever trust it again. Kramer met me in a hallway and led me into a back room that looked like it had been furnished by despair. He slapped a file onto a table. It landed with the dull weight of history. Warehouse fire, Kramer said. 15 years ago. Long Island City. 1 dead. Jonah Pike, 2 injured. Cause electrical fault. Case closed. I flipped it open. The first page was the incident summary, typed and neat. Photographs were clipped inside. Charred beams, blackened doorways, a rectangle of scorched floor that had once been an office. The kind of pictures that make you smell smoke even when you're sitting under fluorescent lights. Kramer watched me. You satisfied? Hardly, I said, and kept turning pages. Jonah Pike, deceased. Listed occupation, warehouse logistics supervisor. Notes. Contacted authorities with concerns regarding shipping irregularities. That line made my eyes pause. Whistleblower, I said. Kramer grunted. Yeah, he was planning to talk. Then the place burned. You know how it goes. I do, I said. It goes the way money wants. I found the section on witnesses, names, statements, times. Then one name jumped out like a hook, Mira Hale. I stared at it. Her statement summary was brief and maddening. Witness present near office area, could not recall key details due to smoke and confusion. No further relevant observations. I whistled softly. Well. Kramer scowled. That your dame? Looks like it, I said. I kept reading and found another name, Randall Voss. Not as a witness, not as a suspect. Worse, as consulting representative for Voss Freight Holdings, present on scene, assisted coordination. And then the punchline, a signature at the bottom of a key report addendum, authorization to close the investigation under accidental cause pending no further evidence. Signed, Randall Voss. I looked up at Kramer. A businessman signed off on your fire report. Kramer's face hardened. He didn't sign off on my report. It was one of those joint task things. City, insurance, private stakeholders. Voss had lawyers, influence, the whole picnic. Back then he was building his empire. Now he builds charities. Charities build reputations, I said. Just like fires burn evidence. Kramer leaned in, jabbing a thick finger at a page. We didn't have enough. It looked like an accident. The wiring was old. The place was a tinderbox. And Jonah Pike was about to talk. I said. Kramer spread his hands. And Jonah Pike died. That's all I can prove. I went deeper into the file. Injury reports, fire department notes, insurance correspondence. Then missing, not literally missing. The file was thick enough, but there was a gap where my instinct said there should be something. A security report. Where's the security statement? I asked. Kramer frowned. What security statement? I found the page listing personnel on duty, and there it was, a name in a small typed line. Gavin Rook Contract Security, night shift. My fingers stopped. I looked up. Kramer blinked, then leaned in. Rook, he said slowly. That's your dead man. Yeah, I said. He was security at the warehouse the night Jonah Pike burned. Kramer's mouth tightened. Then there should be a statement. That's what I'm saying, I told him. I flipped through again, slower. No statement, no interview transcript, no signature line. Nothing, as if Gavin Rook had been on duty and simultaneously did not exist. Kramer's face went ugly. Damn it. You can say that again, I said. If Gavin's statement is missing, someone took it. Kramer's eyes narrowed. Or it was never filed. Same result, I said. A man who was there had his voice removed. I closed the file gently because slamming it would have been theatrical, and I'm only theatrical when it helps. Kramer, I said, who had access to this file. He glared. Half the department over 15 years, clerks, detectives, lawyers with subpoenas, insurance people, his jaw flexed. And anyone with enough influence to make accident look tidy. Like Randall Voss, I said. Kramer didn't answer, which was answer enough. I left with notes, copied by a tired clerk, and a strong desire to be back in Wolfe's office where the furniture understands you. An hour later I was home, handing Wolfe my report like a waiter presenting an unpleasant dish. Wolfe took the pages, read them, and for once did not say, He said nothing at all for a full minute, which in that room is like a siren. Mira Hale was brought in. She stood before Wolfe's desk with her hands folded, trying to look as if she had not been under examination by history. Wolfe looked up at her. 15 years ago, he said. There was a warehouse fire. Jonah Pike died. Mira's face went slack, as if the name had yanked her backward. She began. Wolfe raised a hand. Your name is in the file. You were a witness. You claimed you could not recall key details. Mira's mouth tightened. I couldn't, she said. There was smoke. People were screaming. It was chaos. Perhaps, Wolfe said, and Randall Voss signed an addendum that helped close the matter as an accident. Mira's eyes flashed. He was helping. He was protecting, Wolfe corrected. And Gavin Rook was security on duty that night. Mira flinched. I didn't know that. You did, Wolfe said. And his tone was not accusation, it was certainty. And his statement is missing. Mira's breathing changed, shallow and quick. I never saw. Summonen stole memory, Wolfe said calmly. A statement is memory written down. It can be removed. Testimony is memory spoken. It can be softened. Mira stared at him, and her hands began to shake again, as if the past had reached across the years and taken her wrists. Wolfe leaned forward slightly. If memory is a thief, he said, who paid it to steal? Mira's voice came out thin. I didn't take anything. No, Wolfe said. But you were used, and Mr. Rook. He glanced at my notes. Was not used. He resisted. 15 years later he began to dig. I said, and someone didn't like the digging. Wolfe's eyes lifted. cold and precise. Summoner, he agreed, who benefits from silence. Mira swallowed. Gavin called me, she said. He said he found something. He said he couldn't carry it alone anymore, and he sent roses, Wolfe said. Mira nodded, almost imperceptibly. Wolfe sat back, the cigar unlit between his fingers like a pointer on a map. Then we have 2 bouquets, he said. One apology, one ending, and we have a 15-year-old fire that has been earning interest. He looked at me. Mr. Goodwin, we will see Mr. Voss. I blinked. Voss, the charity king with spotless cuffs. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Yes, the sort of man who believes cleanliness is a substitute for innocence. He turned his gaze to Mira. And you, Miss Hale, will begin to remember. Because in Wolfe's world, forgetting is not always a failure. Sometimes it's a purchase, and we were about to find out who had been paying. Chapter 7. The apology was a key if you've never watched Nero Wolfe prepare to confront a person who is lying to himself as much as to anyone else. You've missed a small masterpiece. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't wave evidence like a flag. He simply arranges the truth on his desk, the way Fritz arranges a dinner course, each item placed to make the next unavoidable. That afternoon, with February light slanting in at the office windows and the roses still sulking by the radiator, Wolfe had Mira Hale seated where clients sit when they come to buy salvation. I was in my chair, a notebook ready, because Wolfe's logic is a clean blade and Archie Goodwin is expected to wipe it afterward. Wolfe did not begin with Jonah Pike or Randall Voss. He began with 6 words. He held up the card again. Miss Hale, he said, you persist in treating this as an unwanted gesture. It is not. It is a confession. Mira's chin lifted. It's an apology, she said, as if correcting him. Indeed, Wolfe replied, but not for what you pretend. The roses were not, I love you. They were, I lied for you. The sentence hit her like a slap made of paper. She blinked. Her hands tightened in her lap. That's, she started. True, Wolfe finished for her. 15 years ago you gave a statement about the warehouse fire. You claimed you could not recall, yet you were present. And Mr. Rook was present. His statement is missing. Mira swallowed. I didn't steal his statement. I did not accuse you of theft, Wolfe said. I accuse you of complicity. Her eyes flashed. Complicity in what? Wolfe's tone stayed level. In the lie that Jonah Pike caused his own death. Silence spread in the room, the way smoke spreads, quietly, and then everywhere. I said, gently, Mira. Gavin was security that night. He was there. If he sent you an apology now, it wasn't for forgetting his birthday. Mira's mouth tightened. She looked at the roses as if they had become witnesses. Wolfe leaned forward, a fraction. Mr. Rook called you last night. He begged you to meet. He wished to confess. Mira's shoulders rose slightly, then dropped as if she had given up holding them. Yes, she said, and the word came out like surrender. He begged. What did he say? Wolfe asked. Mira's eyes closed for a moment. When she opened them, they were dry, too dry. He said he couldn't live with it anymore, she said. He said he helped frame Jonah. I felt my eyebrows lift. Wolfe's did not. How? Wolfe asked. Mira's voice shook, finally losing its Polish. Gavin was hired by Voss Freight back then, contract security. But it wasn't really the warehouse. It was Voss. He'd show up sometimes. He wasn't charities then. He was hungry. She stopped, swallowed. Jonah Pike worked inside. He found things, shipping documents, invoices. He told someone he was going to the authorities, and then her fingers clenched. And then Gavin was told Jonah had stolen something that Jonah was trying to sabotage. By Mr. Voss, Wolfe said. Mira hesitated, then nodded once. By people around him. I never heard Voss say it himself. But everyone knew whose air they were breathing, I said. So Gavin believed them. At first, Mira whispered, he thought Jonah was dirty. He watched him. He followed him. He reported on him. He said he even. Her voice cracked. He even planted a file. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. A file. Mira nodded, miserable. A folder with altered paperwork. Something that would make Jonah look like he'd been moving goods off the books. Gavin said he told himself it was security work. Routine, he said. He didn't think anyone would die. And then the fire, I said. Mira's gaze went distant. The night of the fire, Jonah was still inside. He wasn't supposed to be, Gavin said. He saw him go back in, like Jonah knew something was coming and was trying to get proof out. Wolfe's voice was quiet. Proof. Mira nodded. Jonah had evidence against Randall Voss. Not just irregularities. A ledger names numbers. Who got paid, who got cut out. She laughed once, bitterly. The kind of evidence that turns a businessman into a criminal. And that evidence vanished the night Jonah burned, Wolfe said. Yes, Mira whispered. Gavin said he saw men he didn't recognize. Not firefighters, not police. Men with gloves. He said they went into the office area before anyone else. He said he tried to stop one of them and got shoved aside like a chair. Wolfe's fingers tapped once on the desk. And your role, Miss Hale? Mira flinched. I was junior. I worked in communications for a councilman then. Voss Freight donated to his campaigns. I was sent to the warehouse that day because Jonah had made noise calls, emails. The councilman wanted it handled quietly. Quietly, Wolfe repeated, tasting contempt. Mira's cheeks reddened. I didn't start it. I didn't order a fire. I didn't kill anyone. But you lied, Wolfe said. Her eyes filled at last, but the tears didn't fall. They told me Jonah was unstable, she said. That he'd been stealing, that he had threatened to burn the place. They told me if I said the wrong thing I'd ruin people who were good for the city. They said they'd ruin me first. Wolfe's voice was flat. And you consented. Mira nodded once, ashamed. I said I couldn't recall. I said I didn't see who went in. I said, whatever made it end. And Mr. Rook, Wolfe said, helped create the false cause. Mira's voice dropped. He helped shape it. Yes, he said. He told investigators Jonah was frantic, that Jonah had been messing with wiring that Jonah had talked about, burning it down, things Jonah never said to him. He said, she pressed a fist to her mouth. He said he became the story that killed Jonah twice. I felt a tightness in my chest that wasn't sentimental. It was the familiar discomfort of seeing how easily truth can be replaced when enough people want it gone. Wolfe looked at her steadily. Then why the roses? Mira wiped at her eyes. Finally, because Gavin found something, she said. Recently, he started digging because he couldn't stand it anymore. He said Jonah's family never stopped asking questions, and he couldn't stop hearing them. She drew a breath. He found a copy of part of the evidence. Not the whole ledger, just enough. Names, and a date, and a payment trail. He said it tied back to Voss, and it tied back to me. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. How to you? Mira's voice shook. My statement. My can't recall. He said if I told the truth now, it would crack the whole old case open. He said it would force the police to look again. He said, she swallowed. He said if I forgave him, I would have to face what I did, and once I faced it, I'd testify. I said softly. He thought forgiveness would drag the truth into daylight. Mira nodded. Tears finally slipping down. Yes, he said, if I could forgive him, it would mean I believed him. And if I believed him, I'd stop protecting Voss, whether I meant to or not. He said the apology was a key. Wolfe sat back slightly, and I could see the gears turning behind his stillness. A confession is a key, Wolfe murmured. It opens locks, guilt, denial, silence. He looked at Mira. You did not meet him. No, she said, voice broken. I was afraid. I didn't want to remember. I didn't want to be the person who... She stopped, shaking her head. So I didn't go, and then I got the roses, and then... She covered her face briefly, then lowered her hands, and then he was dead. Wolfe's voice became crisp again. Mr. Goodwin, The significance is now explicit. The apology was intended to compel testimony. Therefore, the murder was intended to prevent it. Somebody killed to keep the lock closed. Wolfe's eyes were cold. Exactly. Mira looked up, pleading now. What do I do? Wolfe regarded her as if evaluating an instrument. You will tell Inspector Kramer the truth, he said, in full. Her face went pale. They'll destroy me. Perhaps, Wolfe said with indifference. But you will be alive, Mr. Rook is not. Mira swallowed hard and nodded. All right. Wolfe turned his gaze to me. And you, he said, will find what Mr. Rook found. I blinked. The evidence copy. Yes, Wolfe said, if it exists. It is now the most dangerous paper in New York. I couldn't argue. Gavin Rook had been murdered before noon, and a second bouquet, black dahlias, sat waiting at a wholesale supplier like a period at the end of a sentence. The street riddle had teeth now. A confession is a key. So who killed to keep the lock closed? Wolfe reached for his phone. We will invite Mr. Voss to speak with me, he said, voice smooth as polished wood. If he refuses, we will go to him. I stood, already feeling the day tighten around us, and Lila crow. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. She is a hinge, he said, and hinges squeal when doors move. He glanced once at the roses, their red heads still too bright for the room. Mr. Rook, Wolfe said quietly, attempted redemption. Then his eyes hardened again. And someone, he added, prefers their sins unredeemed. Chapter 8. Black Dahlias at the River. If Valentine's Day had been trying to look harmless, it gave up by late afternoon. Wolfe had just finished telling Mira Hale that her conscience would be scheduled with Inspector Kramer whether it liked it or not. When the telephone rang, Wolfe listened, said yes, twice, and then hung up with the deliberate care of a man setting down a scalpel. That, he announced, was Mr. Kramer. I lifted my eyebrows. He's calling you now. He is, Wolfe said dryly. Beginning to learn efficiency, the arrangement of black dahlias at Kestrel Floral Supply has been collected. My chair creaked under me. Collected when? At 3:20, Wolfe replied. By a messenger with an authorization note signed. R stared. So our mysterious R is still issuing stationery. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Or someone is performing the role. Inspector Kramer has placed a man at Kestrel. He was too late to see the collector's face. He did see the vehicle. Let me guess, I said. Black sedan. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. Indeed, before I could offer a comment about black sedans being as common in New York as bad manners, the doorbell rang. It was one of those days when the house bell felt like a heartbeat, steady, inevitable, and a little ominous. I went to the hall and opened the door. A uniformed cop stood there, hat in hand, looking apologetic and uncomfortable. Always a bad sign. Mr. Goodwin, he said, Inspector Kramer asked me to bring you this. He held out a damp black ribbon. I took it carefully. It was soaked and smelled faintly of river water and cold. What is it? I asked. Came off a bouquet, he said, found down at the docks floating. I brought it into the office. Wolfe's eyes went to it instantly, and his nostrils flared in that annoying way of his. River, he said, you're getting good at sniffing. I told him, and laid the ribbon on his desk. Wolfe leaned forward, examined the knot. The same utilitarian tie? He murmured. A parcel knot? Not a flourish? Black dahlias? I said. Wolfe's gaze lifted to mine. Yes, the second bouquet has spoken. He reached for the telephone and called Kramer back, without waiting for me to make a wisecrack. When Kramer answered, Wolfe's voice was unhurried and infuriatingly polite. Inspector, the bouquet was found at the docks. Kramer's voice came through loud enough that I got the general flavor, without putting my ear to the receiver. Yeah, Hudson River. Piers down near 12th Avenue. Some guy spotted it bobbing like a dead duck. Wolfe's fingers drummed once on the desk. Is the arrangement intact? Mostly, Kramer snapped. Waterlogged. But yeah, black flowers. Funereal, same knot you told me about. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Interview the man who saw it. Already did, Kramer growled. Dock worker named Sal Caffery says he saw a black sedan stop near the edge yesterday evening. Late, says a guy got out wearing tidy gloves and dumped something heavy. It didn't splash right. Wolfe's eyes became very still. Meaning it hit like a lump, Kramer said. Like something wrapped. Not loose like trash. Wolfe glanced at me. I didn't need translation. Something heavy that didn't splash right. Could be a bouquet in a box. Weighted perhaps, thrown as if it were useless, once its message had been delivered. Or it could be something else entirely. But I wasn't in the mood to invent extra corpses. Wolfe spoke into the phone. Inspector, bring Mr. Caffery to my house. Kramer sputtered. To your... Wolfe, I'm not running a taxi service. You are running a murder investigation, Wolfe said calmly. And you have a witness who saw a vehicle associated with your case. I wish to question him. Bring him. There was a pause, then a reluctant growl. All right, but I'm coming with him. Of course, Wolfe said, and hung up. I whistled softly. You're collecting witnesses like orchids. Wolfe ignored that. He lifted the ribbon between thumb and forefinger, as if it were something delicate and contemptible. This is not merely wet, he said. It is frayed. From the river? No, Wolfe said. From abrasion, it has been pulled across something rough, wood, perhaps, a crate, a pallet. I stared at him. You can tell that from a ribbon. He gave me a look. Mr. Goodwin, if you persist in being astonished by observation, you will spend your life with your mouth open. I shut it. The front door opened 10 minutes later with the heavy tread of official displeasure. Kramer came in first, coat open, face set to scowl. Behind him was a stocky man in a dock jacket and knit cap, weathered as driftwood. His hands were large and scarred, his eyes were quick. He looked like a man who had learned not to be impressed by anything except, possibly Nero Wolfe in a brownstone office. Kramer jerked his head. This is Sal Caffery. Mr. Caffery, Wolfe said, sit. Sal sat carefully, as if the chair might charge him rent. Wolfe began in his mild, deadly way. You saw a black sedan at the docks. Sal nodded. Yeah. Late. I was finishing up. You saw a man, Wolfe prompted. A guy, Sal said. He sent Saul Panzer out with a short instruction and a longer check, which Saul accepted without comment because Saul is practical and likes money. Within 2 hours, Saul was back with Lila Crow's evening schedule, her usual habits, and the name of the restaurant where she liked to eat, when she wanted to be seen looking harmless. Wolfe sat behind his desk, cigar lit now, the smoke rising like punctuation. Mr. Goodwin, he said, Miss Crow will come. I made the call. I didn't threaten. I didn't plead. I merely told her Nero Wolfe wished to speak with her again, and that Inspector Kramer was also interested in certain matters connected to Jonah Pike and Gavin Rook. Her locked smile might have held on a sidewalk, but it loosened in a telephone line. She arrived within 40 minutes. Lila Crow entered the office as if it belonged to her employer. She wore the same neat coat, the same careful hair, the same smile fixed in place. Only her eyes were less calm. They had a shine now, anger, fear, or the knowledge that she had run out of script. Mr. Wolfe, she said, voice controlled, this is becoming harassment. Wolfe gestured to the chair. Sit. I prefer to stand, she said. Wolfe's eyebrows rose slightly. Then you prefer to be uncomfortable. She sat. I noticed her wrist immediately. The thorn scratch was covered by a bandage, too neat to be accidental. A polite little attempt at erasure. Wolfe noticed it too. His eyes lingered for half a second, then moved on because Wolfe never wastes time congratulating himself. Miss Crow, he said. Dean Mercer has been beaten and his jaw wired shut. Her smile flickered. I don't know who that is. You do, Wolfe said. He manages the Velvet Step. He spoke with Mr. Goodwin yesterday. He is now incapable of speaking with anyone. Lila's bandaged hand tightened in her lap. That's horrible.
The watch is tied to a
It is also
person.
informative,
Angela killed.
Wolfe replied.
Let's figure it out the
It
story.
indicates urgency.
Hope you
Mr.
like
Rook
it.
was murdered.
Comment next, and I
Mr.
will go
Mercer was
part two.
silenced. Someone is anxious. Lila's smile locked again. Are you accusing me? Wolfe's gaze was steady. I am accusing you of being employed. Her eyes flashed. Excuse me, by Randall Voss, Wolfe said, to tidy chaos into what you would call bad luck. The words hung. For the first time her composure wavered enough to show teeth, not literal, but emotional. Anger is always teeth. You have no proof, she snapped. Wolfe nodded,
Nero
as if she had
Wolfe
said
and
the
the
sky was
umbilical
blue.
cord of
You
his
attend
watch.
events, you handle
A jeweler
calls.
shows
You
fulfill a
smooth
watch
matters
that only
before they
runs
become
when someone touches
scandals.
it.
A
Open
fixer,
the
Miss
bag,
Crow.
there was
A
pure
person
thin
paid to
wire,
ensure that
like
misfortune
the
appears
watch is tied
natural.
to a person.
Lila's jaw
Angela
tightened.
killed. Let's figure
This
out
is
the story.
ridiculous. Is it?
Hope you like it.
Wolfe asked
Comment
mildly.
next,
Black
and I will go
dahlias were
part
ordered
two.
under the same cash notation as the crimson roses. They were tied with a utilitarian knot and bound with ribbon that contains a metallic filament. That ribbon matches the signature D. Faycore ribbon used by the Voss Foundation's gala supplier. I saw her throat work. The smile stayed, but it was no longer pleasant. It was a mask glued on too tight.
Nero Wolfe
Wolfe
and the
continued,
umbilical cord
voice
of
calm.
his watch. A
Summoning
jeweler
with
shows
access to
fulfill a
Voss gala
watch
supplies
that only
handled both
runs when someone
bouquets.
touches it.
You have such
Open
access,
the bag,
and you have a
there was
thorn scratch,
pure thin wire,
consistent with
like
handling
the
roses,
watch is tied
close
a
to the
person.
body.
Then Angela killed.
Lila's
Let's
eyes
figure
narrowed.
out the story.
Half of New York
Hope you
has
like
access
it.
to gala
Comment
supplies.
next, and I will go
Half of
part
New
two.
York, Wolfe said, is not you. Her smile held another second, then cracked, not into hysteria, not into tears, but into something flatter and more honest. All right, she said quietly. Suppose I have done favors. Suppose I have carried messages. Suppose I have cleaned up after people who can afford to be careless. What then? Wolfe leaned forward a fraction. Then you will tell me about Jonah Pike. Lila's breath
Nero
came out
Wolfe
slow.
and the umbilical cord
She looked
of
at me
his
once,
watch.
then
A
back at
jeweler
Wolfe.
shows fulfill a
You think
watch
this is
that only
about
runs when
flowers,
someone
she
touches
said.
it.
It
Open
isn't
the bag,
flowers are for the
there was
public.
pure
This,
thin wire,
she
like
made a small
the
motion with
watch
her
is tied
bandaged
to a
wrist,
person.
is for the
Angela
private.
killed. Let's figure
Wolfe's
out the
voice
story.
was soft.
Hope
Proceed.
you like it.
Lila's
Comment
smile
next,
returned
and I
for an
will go
instant,
part two.
but it was not locked now. It was bitter. Jonah Pike wasn't just a whistleblower, she said. That's what the file says, because that's what people can swallow. Jonah Pike was Randall Voss's former partner. The room felt colder. Even Wolfe's cigar smoke seemed to pause. Partner, Wolfe repeated. In freight, Lila said. Back when Voss wasn't a saint, Pike built the roots. Voss built the charm. Pike kept ledgers like a priest keeps sins, and then Voss decided he didn't like sharing. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. So he cut him out. Lila nodded once. There was a buyout on paper, a handshake in public, and then a fire. I said, convenient cremation. Her eyes flicked to me, hard, exactly. Wolfe's tone sharpened. And Gavin Rook. Lila exhaled. Rook was hired security like the file says. But he wasn't just watching doors. He was watching Pike. He was told Pike was unstable, dangerous, stealing. He was handed a story and told to help it walk. Wolfe's voice was quiet. He complied. Yes, Lila said, at first. And then the fire happened, and it was too late to stop being useful. Wolfe's eyes did not leave her face. The hidden ledger. Lila's bandaged hand flexed. Gavin found it, she said. Not the whole thing. A copy, a partial ledger Pike had hidden. It showed payments, bribes, kickbacks. It showed the fire wasn't an accident. It was staged. It showed who was paid to look away. And Mira Hale, Wolfe said. Lila's mouth tightened. Mira was young then. She was sent as a witness with a title that sounded official enough to intimidate and soft enough to bend. She said she couldn't recall. That sealed it. It turned murder into bad wiring. I felt Mira stir in the front room beyond the office door. She had been listening, though Wolfe had told her to remain available. In that house, available often means within earshot. Wolfe's eyes flicked toward the door, then back to Lila. Mr. Rook sent roses to Miss Hale, Wolfe said. Why? Lila's laugh was short and ugly, because he finally understood the trick. He thought guilt was the danger. It wasn't. The danger was forgiveness. Wolfe's eyebrows lifted. Explain. Gavin knew Mira was the hinge. Lila said. If she forgave him, she'd have to admit she'd been lied to, and that she'd helped. And if she admitted that, she'd testify. Her forgiveness would become her testimony. Wolfe's voice was flat, therefore the apology was a key. Lila nodded, eyes suddenly tired. Yes, a key that would open a door Voss had kept locked for 15 years. I said, and someone killed to keep it shut. Lila's gaze lifted to Wolfe, and for the first time her locked smile was gone entirely. What was left was fear, real, plain, unadorned. You think Voss did it, she said. I think, Wolfe replied, that Voss inspired it. Lila swallowed. Voss doesn't get his hands dirty, she said. He pays, he persuades, he threatens with consequences, not fists. And you, Wolfe said softly, are the consequence. Her eyes flashed. I'm not a killer. Wolfe's gaze held hers. No, he said. You are a custodian. You tidy chaos. You convert crimes into bad luck. Lila's lips pressed together. If I talk, I'm finished. Wolfe nodded slightly. If you do not, you may be finished in a different manner. Dean Mercer's wired jaw should make that plain. For a moment she sat very still, as if weighing two endings. Then
Wolfe
she
is
leaned
the
forward.
umbilical cord of
Gavin
his
was going to
watch.
meet Mira
A
at the
jeweler
velvet
shows
step,
Wolfe a watch
she said.
that only runs
He
in
had the
small
ledger
pieces.
copy with him.
Open
He
the
was going
back,
to show
there
her.
was a
He wanted her to
wire.
understand before she
The
forgave
watch is
him.
tied to a person.
Wolfe's eyes
If you are
sharpened,
killed, that's
and the
the way
ledger,
of the story.
Lila's voice
I
dropped.
hope you like it.
Gone, taken
Comment
off him,
next, and I will
like
draw
his
part
future.
2.
Wolfe sat back, and I could see the final shape of the case forming behind his eyes. The last riddle before the storm was clear enough to carve into stone. If forgiveness exposes betrayal, then the killer isn't jealous. They're terrified. Wolfe looked at Lila Crow with the calm of a man who has reached the end of a maze and found the door. Miss Crow, he said, you will now help me open it. Chapter 10, Thorns in the Spotlight. Wolfe has a gift for making other people take the risks while he keeps his chair.
Wolfe
It
is
isn't
the umbilical
laziness,
cord of
it's
his
method with
watch. A
upholstery.
jeweler shows
When
Wolfe a
Lila
watch
Crow
that
finished
only
talking
runs
in
when
our
someone
office,
touches it.
with her locked
Open
smile
the back,
finally
there
cracked
was a
open to show the
thin
machinery
wire
behind
inside.
it,
The watch
Wolfe
is
did
tied
not
to a
leap up and
person.
shout for
The
Inspector
jeweler
Kramer.
killed
He merely
that
looked at
figure
his
of the
desk
story.
calendar, as
Hope
if
you like
murder were
it.
an appointment
Comment
Fritz had
next,
forgotten
and
to
I will draw
pencil in.
part 2.
Mr. Goodwin, he said. Mr. Voss is holding a Valentine charity event this evening. I nodded. Walls dripping roses, waiters dripping charm, and, Wolfe went on, smiles dripping lies. Lila sat rigid in the client chair, hands clasped, bandage bright on her wrist. Mira Hale was in the doorway
Wolfe
now.
and the umbilical
She had
cord
come in
of his
despite Wolfe's
watch.
instruction
A
to
jeweler
remain
shows
available,
Wolfe a watch
because
that
people do
only
not
runs
remain
when
in
someone
waiting
touches
rooms
it.
when their past is
Open the
confessing in the
back,
next
there
room.
was a thin
Her
wire
face was
inside.
pale,
The
but
watch
her
is
eyes
tied
were
to a
steadier than they
person.
had been all
The jeweler
day.
killed
Wolfe
that
looked
figure
from
of
one
the
woman to the
story.
other. We will set a
Hope you
trap,
like it.
he said,
Comment
as if
next,
announcing
and I
he
will
would
draw
order
part
soup.
2.
Kramer arrived within the hour, summoned by Wolfe with 2 calls, one to Kramer's office and one to Kramer's Pride. The inspector came in scowling, took one look at Lila, and stopped as if he had hit a wall. What the hell is she doing here? He demanded. Wolfe's reply was calm, confessing. Kramer's eyes narrowed. To what? Wolfe glanced at me. I gave Kramer the short version. Jonah Pike, the warehouse fire,
Wolfe and the
the missing
umbilical cord
statement,
of his
Voss,
watch.
the
A
ledger,
jeweler
the
shows Wolfe a
roses,
watch
the
that
black
only
dahlias,
runs when
the
someone
gala
touches it.
ribbon, and
Open
Lila's
the
role
back,
as
there
fixer.
was a
Kramer's
thin
expression
wire
went from
inside.
scowl to something
The watch is
uglier,
tied to a
the
person.
face of a man
The jeweler
realizing he has
killed
been
that
walking around a
figure of the
trapdoor
story.
for 15
Hope
years.
you like it.
You got proof,
Comment
he
next,
barked.
and I will draw
We
part
will,
2.
Wolfe said. Tonight. Kramer stared. Tonight, Wolfe, I don't stage. You do, Wolfe interrupted, if you wish to arrest the correct person. Wolfe leaned back, fingers steepled. We leak a single rumor, he said, that Miss Hale will speak publicly at Mr. Voss's event, and that she will surrender the hidden ledger to the authorities, there in full view of his donors. Mira stiffened. I will. You will, Wolfe said, and his tone made it a fact. Mira swallowed. That will ruin me. Wolfe's eyes were indifferent. You have already assisted in ruining a man who is dead. Your discomfort is not persuasive. Kramer started to protest, but Wolfe raised a hand. Inspector, you will place men discreetly. Mr. Goodwin will attend as my representative. You will have recording equipment, not for theatrics. Wolfe's eyes flicked toward Lila, for certainty. Lila's voice came out thin. He'll send me. Wolfe's gaze fixed on her. Yes, he said. Because he does not act. He directs, and you obey. Her bandaged hand clenched. I can't. You already did, Wolfe said. Now you will do so usefully. That evening, the Voss Foundation's Valentine event took place in a midtown ballroom that could have been rented by a prince or a corporation, and probably had been. The walls were decorated in crimson roses in such quantity that the air smelled like perfume trying to cover sweat. Couples drifted, donors posed, photographers flashed, and Randall Voss stood at the center of it, like the host of a very expensive lie. I had attended enough charity events to know the real currency was not money. It was forgiveness. Public forgiveness for private greed. Voss was very good at buying it. He shook hands like a man blessing the faithful. His cuffs were spotless. His smile was perfect. The only thing wrong about him was that everything was right. Mira arrived with me, looking as if she had borrowed courage, and was afraid it would be repossessed. Kramer's men were scattered through the room. Waiters, guests, shadows with eyes. Saul Panzer had arranged it, because Saul arranges anything if the check clears. Wolfe, naturally, was not present. He was at home, in his office, waiting for the world to bring him the proof. It owed him. We made the leak easy. A whispered word to the event coordinator, a remark to a reporter, a hint dropped like a napkin near a donor who enjoyed passing gossip more than writing checks. The rumor moved through the room faster than champagne. By 8:30, I saw Randall Voss's smile tighten for the first time. It was small, almost invisible, but there it was. A man can tolerate many insults. He cannot tolerate loss of control in front of his worshippers. At 9, he disappeared briefly behind a curtain. At 9:05, Lila Crow appeared. She moved through the crowd with that same calm, that same locked competence, and I almost admired her. Almost the bandage on her wrist was hidden beneath a long glove now. Tidy gloves, like the dock worker had said. She
Nero
came
Wolfe
straight to
and the
Mira.
umbilical
Come
cord
with me,
of wristwatch.
Lila said softly, smiling as if offering a tour.
Touches it.
Mira's
Open the
face
bag,
went
there
pale,
was a
but she
pure
didn't
thin
hesitate.
wire, like
She had crossed
the
the
watch
point where
tied to
fear
a
makes
person,
decisions.
then a gelatin
Now it
crystal
only
that
comments.
figured out the story.
I followed at a
Hope
respectful
like
distance,
it.
like a
And
husband
next,
shadowing
I
his
will
wife's
have part
dance
two.
partner. Lila led Mira into a smaller side room, an anteroom with coats and catering trays. The roses were even there, on the tables, as if the building itself had been paid to pretend innocence. Kramer's man, disguised as a waiter, caught my eye. His hand was near his pocket, where the recorder sat. Good. Lila turned to Mira, still smiling. You can't do this, she said. Mira's voice shook, but it didn't break. I have to.
Nero Wolfe and the umbilical
Lila's
cord
smile
of
locked tighter.
wristwatch. A
Number, you
jeweler
want to make
shows Wolfe a
amends.
watch that only
That's
runs
noble,
when someone touches
but
it.
you're not going to destroy
Open the
him,
bag,
not for a
there was
dead
a
man who
pure
finally
thin
grew a
wire, like
conscience.
the
Mira
watch is
swallowed.
tied to a person,
Gavin
then a
tried to fix what he
gelatin
did.
that figured out the
That's the
story.
problem,
Hope
Lila
like
snapped.
it.
And then she
Next,
caught
and I
herself,
will drop
and the
part
smile
two.
returned like a mask slapped back on. I stepped a little closer. Careful, I said. Your mask is slipping. Lila's eyes flicked to me. Archie Goodwin, she said, mild. Always lurking. I make a living, I said. Why don't you tell Mira what you told us in Wolfe's office? Her eyes hardened. You don't know what you're playing
Nero
with.
Wolfe
I
and
know
the
a man
umbilical
is dead,
cord of
I said,
wristwatch.
and
A
another man
jeweler
is
shows
hiding
Wolfe a
behind
watch
roses.
that only runs when
For a
someone
second,
touches it.
something in her face
Open the
shifted,
bag, there was
the
a
locked
pure
smile
thin
straining
wire,
under weight.
like the watch is
Then, like a
tied to a
door
person,
finally giving
then a
way,
gelatin
it broke.
that figured out the
You
story.
think I wanted to kill him?
Hope you like it.
She hissed.
Comment next,
Mira
and I will
flinched.
drop part two.
Lila. Lila's voice rose, and the room suddenly felt too small. He was going to open it, she said. He was going to take that apology and turn it into a confession that would drag everything into court. He thought forgiveness would cleanse him. It exposes. Mira's eyes filled. So you killed him? Lila's jaw tightened. Then she said it, flat, bare, inevitable. Yes. The word
Nero
hung in the
Wolfe
air,
and the
and in
umbilical
the hall
cord of
behind us
his
I heard the
watch.
faint
A
click of
jeweler
the
shows
recorder
for
being
free a
steadied.
watch that only runs when
Kramer's man
someone
was
touches
getting
it.
it all.
On the
Lila's
back,
eyes were
there was a
bright and
pale
fierce.
thin wire, like
I killed
the
Gavin
watch is
Rook to
tied to a
stop the
person.
apology, she
The
said.
jeweler killed
Because
to
once
figure
Mira
out the
forgave him,
story.
she would have to
Hope you
admit her
liked
lie.
it.
She would
Comment next,
testify.
and I will drop
And that
part
would
2.
bury Voss. It would bury all of us. Mira's voice came out small. You could have let him speak, and let him rearrange graves. Lila's laugh was sharp. Some doors don't open, they break. She took a step toward Mira, and the waiter moved, Kramer's man quick, blocking her with a tray that suddenly became a shield. Easy, the waiter said, and his voice was not a waiter's anymore. Lila froze. Her eyes darted, calculating exits. Inspector Kramer stepped into the doorway, then big and solid, badge out. All right, Crow, he growled. That'll do. Lila stared at him, then at Mira, then at me. Her smile flickered one last time, an attempt to recover control, and then it was gone. Kramer's men took her. She didn't fight fixers rarely do. They save their strength for denial. Outside, the ballroom continued to hum for a few seconds. Unaware, then someone spotted a badge and a commotion, and the whole room began to ripple with the delicious panic of wealthy people watching consequences enter. Randall Voss appeared at the curtain, face composed, eyes sharp. He saw Kramer, he saw Lila being led away. His smile did not crack. That was the most damning thing about him. He started forward, but Kramer's eyes pinned him like a nail. Hold it, Voss, Kramer snapped. We'll have a chat. Voss's voice was smooth. Inspector, this is a misunderstanding. Save it, Kramer said. Save it for Wolfe's office. He likes speeches. Voss's gaze flicked to me. For the first time, his eyes showed something real, anger, or fear, or both. Mira stood very still. Then she drew a breath, squared her shoulders and walked past Voss as if he were just another donor. I'm going to the police, she said, voice steady now. I'm going to tell them everything. I couldn't recall. I'm recalling. Voss's face tightened. Mira. She didn't stop. Forgiveness doesn't erase guilt, she said, and I could tell she was repeating it as much to
Nero
herself as to
Wolfe
him.
and the umbilical
It drags
cord
it
of
into
his
court.
watch.
Kramer's
A
men
jeweler
moved Voss
shows
toward
for
the
free a
exit,
watch that
not
only
arresting him
runs when
yet.
someone touches it.
Kramer wanted Wolfe's
On the
office
back,
gathering.
there was a
The
pale
finale
thin
Wolfe would
wire,
insist
like
on as if it were
the
part of the
watch is tied to a
Constitution.
person.
But
The
Voss
jeweler
was no
killed
longer the
to
host.
figure out
He
the
was a
story.
suspect in his own
Hope you
ballroom,
liked
latter.
it. Comment next,
Much
and I
later,
will drop
back
part
at the
2.
brownstone, Wolfe held his office gathering the way a judge holds court, with patience, pride, and an expectation of submission. Voss sat in the red leather chair looking offended. Kramer stood bristling, Mira sat pale but composed, and Lila Crow sat between two detectives, her locked smile finally irrelevant. Wolfe spoke for 15 minutes, laying out the logic like a map, the roses as apology, the black dahlias as a staged ending, the ribbon fiber tying the bouquets to Voss's
Nero
gala
Wolfe
supply,
and the umbilical
the
cord
missing
of
receipt
his
line,
watch.
the
A
dock
jeweler
worker's black
shows for free a
sedan,
watch
the
that
silencing
only
of
runs
Dean
when someone
Mercer,
touches it.
the 15-year
On the back,
old
there
fire,
was a
the
pale
missing
thin
security
wire, like
statement.
the watch
And the
is
reason
tied to a
forgiveness was
person.
the true
The jeweler
threat.
killed
He
to
didn't need to
figure
prove
out the
Voss
story.
struck the blow.
Hope you liked
He
it.
proved Voss
Comment
created the
next,
climate
and
in
I will
which
drop
blows were
part 2.
hired, arranged, and excused. Lila's recorded admission did the rest. When Wolfe finished, Kramer exhaled like a man finally allowed to breathe. All right, he growled. We got her on murder. We'll get him on what we can. Conspiracy, obstruction, that old fire if we can crack it. Mira's testimony. We'll assist, Wolfe said, as if granting
Nero
permission.
Wolfe and the
Kramer
umbilical
left with his
cord of
prisoners and
his
his
watch.
paperwork,
A jeweler
looking as if he
shows
had
for free a
swallowed a
watch that
porcupine.
only runs when
Mira
someone
stayed
touches
long
it.
enough to look at the
On the
roses one
back,
last
there
time.
was a pale
I
thin
didn't
wire,
forgive him in
like
time,
the
she
watch
said
is tied to
quietly.
a
You
person.
will,
The
Wolfe
jeweler
said,
killed
surprisingly
to
mild.
figure out the story.
For your own
Hope
sake,
you liked
not to
it.
absolve him,
Comment
to cease
next,
being
and I
his
will drop
accomplice.
part 2.
She nodded, then left. When the house was finally quiet, I walked Wolfe to the door of the office and watched him stand for a moment, looking out at West 35th Street. It was raining now. Not a romantic drizzle, but a hard neon rain that made the city glow and smear like wet paint. Wolfe adjusted his dressing gown and said, almost to himself, "Love brings flowers." "I waited," he
Nero
added,
Wolfe
in a
and the
voice as
umbilical
flat as
cord of
truth.
wristwatch.
"Fear
A
brings
jeweler
bouquets
showed
too."
Wolfe a
I looked
watch
at the
that
wet
only
street.
runs when
The
someone
lights
conceals it.
reflected on the pavement,
Open the back,
like
there
spilled
was a
confessions.
pale thin wire.
"And only one of them,"
The watch
Wolfe
is tied
finished,
to a person.
"comes with a
Then
body."
jeweler
Then he
kills
turned
the
back toward
Australia
the
of
stairs,
story.
already reclaiming his
Hope you
evening
liked
from
it.
the world.
Comment
And I
next,
went to
and
the
I
office
saw part
window
2.
and looked at the roses. Crimson, heavy, apologetic, and wondered how many crimes in New York had started with something beautiful delivered on time.